Well, good afternoon. I know it's 12 p.m., it's noon, it's lunchtime, and all of you want to go to lunch. I will make this short and sweet, I think, maybe. So, short introduction about myself. I come from sunny California, San Francisco. It's usually sunny. A bit about a background about myself. I'm both a designer and a developer. So he mentioned that previously that was my project at Google. I was a UX designer at Google, and I was creating some concepts for Google Maps. I also do full stack development. Currently, I'm more involved with Rails and Backbone. And in this realm of both design and development, I'm always sort of excited about how I can bring these two things together, software engineering and design together. And part of the reason as I think about this is that, hey, we have GitHub, we have version control, we have collaboration for developers. And GitHub is really the de facto standard for source control for developers. And how about designers? And like in the design space, like I've been to many companies, and it's all a mess. We are using shared folder. We are kind of, different companies are doing different things, and it's always hard to sort of collaborate with developers and among designers. And which is why I started Pixelapse 3 years ago. And you can think about Pixelapse, which is sort of a visual version control and collaboration platform for designers. And you think about it as a Git and GitHub in the design space. If you are curious about the name, it's Pixels and Time Lapse, which is Pixelapse. So back to the topic today, open design movement. And the first question is like, what is that? And like you may have guessed some sort of, oh, it must be something about open source and things like that. So what's going on today is that there's some chatter around the web, and late last year there was an article about Pixelapse and about this movement. And this is actually the reason why the conference reached out to me. And there's really this paragraph that sums up quite well what open design actually means and what it stands for. And it's the idea that designers should be willing to share not just their final art piece of work, not just their polished work, but their inspiration, their process, and even the source of the design with the community, not just among designers, but also with developers. And throughout this talk, I will talk about why we do that and how we can do that and what's the meaning behind it. If you go to Twitter, you can also see that people are starting to talk about it. And we are really just at the birth of open design. And in this movement that I'm pushing for right now, we are really just at the start, and it's only about 1 or 2 months old. And it's about how we can come together and make this work. So the first question is that what exactly I mean by open design, what this movement entails. I think the first question we have to address is the word design itself. Design is kind of vague. Design can mean a lot of things, right? My meaning of design is different from yours. So I want to address what design means in the first place. So to me, design is really a visual representation of an idea or creation. It could be anything. And as long as you are using some sort of pixels on the monitor and you use that to represent an idea or creation, to me, that's design. That could be 2D UI design. That could be blueprints, wireframes, your sketch. That could be textures. And that could be 3D models. And these are just some examples of what design could mean. And now that we know what I mean by design, we can actually talk about what I mean by open. And this word itself actually means a lot of things in my mind. And it really means open source, open progress, and open collaboration. I think a lot of people, when they first heard about open design, and they mean, you probably mean open source design. It's really more than that. It's all three things together. So open source is very simply that you share the original source of your design, of your creation, of your artwork. And this just means that you're sharing the non-flattened, the layered version, the editable version of your design. Not just the final pixels, not just a PNG, but the PSD, the AI file behind it. And open progress is, I think, actually the most interesting part of this aspect, is how we can share and showcase the progression of your design. And what we have seen today is that a lot of design out there is you see the final piece and you actually don't understand and don't see what's happening behind. You don't see the month of hard work that happened. And The idea about this open progress is that if I have a paper aeroplane icon, I can go back in time and see how that has progressed over time and what's the thought process over it. I'll give you a very good example that we have at Pixelapse. So this is one of the guy that put up this stuff. It's called Eternal Light. And this is the final artwork. It's pretty, right? It's the poster. And this is what you'll see at, say, Dribble, you will see at Behance, or you will see somewhere else at his blog. And the question is that, whoa, this is really nice. How did he do that? What did he gone through? Like, we have no idea of all these things. And part of open design is to encourage the open progression of this. And this is what he had. So he started off with just a simple photo of a girl. He removed the sort of the background. He added his own background. He sort of adjusts a bit of the colors. He added more colors. He added some flair to it, added his abstract art. He added some more abstract stuff, added a tiger, added some strokes, added a triangle. And now he put a flare on it, and then he darkens the side. And then he reached the final artwork. Let's just step back in time, right? And we used to have this like play button, and you can actually generate a GIF out of this. You just see the progression of it. And one of our top requests was that a lot of designers on our site has like 200, 1,000 revisions of a single work. They say, can you export that to a YouTube movie so that I can just play it and fast forward? And the idea of our open design is not just your source, not just allowing someone to see the PSD file of this, but actually the progression of your design. So this is actually lifted directly from the manifesto that I wrote, but I just want to highlight two things. It's about sharing your process, which includes some of your angles, some of your missteps. You added this stroke which is wrong, but sharing that is actually really useful because each of these 4 stars is a learning experience. Each of these things that you have done is a learning experience. And you not only invite others to understand about it, others can learn from your mistakes or learn from your thought process of why you do something. Why do you add that line and then you removed it? And things like that. So it's about sharing all this process. And the last final bit of open design is the collaboration piece, about being open to collaboration. Collaboration means a lot of things. It means accepting feedback from others, or it means editing the same file together. So we go back to the same file that we looked at. Someone annotates on it and says that, hey, I don't really like the black horizontal lines. I would make it slightly more opaque or more transparent. So being open to collaboration need not mean the idea that multiple designers design on the same piece. Collaboration just means, it's also meaning that you can review and critique constructive feedback on a certain art piece and I go on and edit it. That itself is also part of collaboration. And how do you be open to that? So to kind of sum up, like designing in the open of all these aspects, not only I'm sharing my layered files, but I need to be showing my progression. I need to be acceptive to collaboration feedback. And that requires, it can be frightening, which I kind of agree, but you kind of need to start that. And it requires some bold effort. But I think the overall idea of this is that together with this idea, we can push boundaries, we can create better work. And obviously the next question is why, right? But you could save this link and look at it later, but this describes the complete manifesto of what open design is about. So obviously the question is then, why do we really need this? This is kind of like nice and good. Oh, you can see all this design is open, is there. So why do we exactly need that? So I give you a couple of main points that I think about. One is that design has always been quite close. There's always an air of exclusivity around it. Not sure whether you know Dribble. Dribble is a very popular site for designers that can post their stuff, and like everyone is just hunting down about invitations, right? It's kind of like closed communities, like secretive. And all of you guys who are in big companies, sometimes you know there's a design team that exists, but you never know what they're working on because they are like, I'm working on some like cool design. I will let you know when I'm done. So it's always kind of close. And what I think about open design is like, hey, let's take a look at behind the scenes for design. It's kind of like that, like what's going on behind and what can you learn from that. And the equivalent for design is that exposing this part, right? Exposing the layout file, exposing the AI or the workspace for all of you. So again, this as an example, on the left, you could see the final artwork that someone did, the icon. And behind the scenes is really the iterations that the designer has made. And you feel more comfortable with that. And I'm trying to make this more accessible, not just among designers, but also non-designers. And to explain that, I'm going to show you a couple of examples. You see the icon, and you usually see the icon, the colorful icon the designer made of a sort of a light bulb or plant. And without the context of the shapes, you realize that making that icon is not that hard. It's just about more shapes together, and you union that. All of you understand union because you're developers, and you intersect that and you created an icon. It's actually not hard. And to take a simpler example, which is like a time icon, right? It's really just circles, and you put circles and squares together, you union the correct shapes, and you get a final icon. Exposing that allows us to make design more accessible, not just to designers, but also to developers or non-designers. The second main point of why we need open design is actually openness allows us to create greater innovations. We are all familiar with AutoCAD, GitHub, where it's the main source of open source for codes, right? And the truth is that we all know that we benefited a lot from the open source community. These are just 4 very simple examples of open source and how the community has constantly contributed to make it better. And if you think about that, we should actually really bring that to the design space. How can we mirror that space about making designs better to the design world? And this is really the second point that I think is really beneficial for us to have this movement. It's not just about code, and open design is beyond open source. It's open progression, which suits the visual aspect of design, and it's open collaboration. So I think, again, I talk about this, we want to encourage extension of designs in the sense that I created something, I can fork it off you, right? I created an icon set. How can I add 10 more icons to it? And we want to encourage feedback, we want to encourage learning. The third point is really the idea that some designers are already sharing today, but they are all designing in silos, and Open Design Movement wants to bring that together. What I mean by silos, if you go to Dribbble and you look for freebies, you look for downloadable icons, you'll realize that someone has created 44 shades of free icons, and it's there for you to download. But the question now is that, it's the same as on Behance. The question now is that, if I add one more icon to my icon pack, what am I going to do? How do I update that? But most designers, when they add one more icon to this design, they don't re-upload another 45 shades of free icons because it's already there, it's static. It's almost like a silo on its own. And the next time they release a new pack, they have to wait until they design 20 more icons and they release it as 64 shades of free icons. So one thing is that it becomes a silo in the sense that I can't constantly update it now. And what if I improve the spacing on my paragraph? I can't really update it because there's too small of a change. I already uploaded a zip file. What if I made a mistake? It's the same thing. It's like it's all in silos now. So designs are actually alive, and the current situation of these community sites like Dribbble, like Behance, is a snapshot of what I have polished, and it's just there. Now I can't evolve around that artwork. I need to re-upload something new. So really the state of sharing should be one that allows designers to constantly update and make design feel alive. And part of it is really the open progression. Like if you think about the poster we've seen earlier, how does the evolution of that, and every time the designer make a change and being there itself makes it alive, make the design seems real. And the thing is that we shouldn't just allow anyone to see the latest state of the design, but also multiple previous versions. So we talked quite a bit about what open design is and why it's good. And the next question is really, how can this whole platform or this whole idea work. So we need a platform that really supports these three things that I keep talking about: open source, open progress, open collaboration. And just to drill into each of these points is that we need some sort of way to host and access the source files. We need a way that you can download your PSD files, your AI files. We need a way that can track and view your progressions. And we need a way that allows everyone to have easy collaborations, be it providing feedback or working on the same artwork together. So the first question is that GitHub is like full of open source projects today, and we should really just use that. And we think about GitHub is this, the Twitter Bootstrap GitHub page, and you can host source files there, which is great. You can track version history, which is great. You have collaborators on it, which is also great. But the problem is that it's really great for developers, and it's perfect for text-based projects. But it's lacking something very important for design space, which is it's not visual. It's not really so great for visual stuff. It hosts files, it tracks history, there's collaboration features, but you can't preview the files. Everything is text-based. You cannot visualize history easily. It's all like specific commits, and you need to roll back and to see the changes. It's not as a whole designed as a visual platform or a community. So one of the things we did is to, well, this again, we cannot preview the graphic files. So one of the other things that we think about is that how about Dribble and Behance, which is popular for designers. But the problem with that is that designs are usually more than just a single file. And most of these community sites focuses on, hey, this is a snapshot of a screenshot of something that is just really small and just one file. But if you think about a design project in general, it has multiple files and folders together. And this could be something that is very common that you see. You have a folder, you have your source files, you have your PNGs, you have your assets. And all these things bundled together makes a design project. And most of the time, designers will just upload a zip file, which is kind of a problem there. The problem is that now I can't actually go in and understand the contents of the file, which is like on GitHub repo, you can just go to the repo and see every single file itself without the need to download this whole repo down to your desktop and look at it. And you can't search for the contents, and you don't know what format this thing is designed in. So a zip file creates problem because I need to first download and look at it. So with the various problems that it has with GitHub and Dribble, and we look at how we can create a platform that supports open design, we created Pixelapse Open Community. So this is one of the page that we have. Yelp, if you are not familiar with, is a very popular food review app in the US. So Yelp created and uploaded the style guide there. And if you look at all these projects page, which is kind of like GitHub repo, but a lot more visual, the first thing that we provide is that, hey, it has to provide some cover, some context about what this project is about. And then you have your README there, and that's it, which is really straightforward. And when we go to the files and explore the files, you'll see that instead of list of files, I will extract out the thumbnails and allow you to look at it immediately. So if you look at this, you can explore a design project just by looking at drilling the different folders, different files, and look at it. And if you realize that it's actually, all these are .ai file, which is Illustrator files, we'll extract out the previews and show you immediately. And you can see the latest iteration of the design itself. Same with GitHub, we provide conversations and the idea of releases in the sense that, hey, the last set of icons I created is the 44 sets of icons. I added one more icon, it's not quite ready. You can still look at it, but if you want to download the last stable version, you can still do it. So that's releases. And we provide a simple dashboard. And this is just to quickly run through the idea of being very visual and being supportive of the design concept or the design community. So the most important thing then is that, hey, you're hosting all these files, you're showing thumbnails, which is kind of great. And if you think about the previous idea about how do we actually see history, how do we see progression of a design, this is how it looks like on the file page. Every single file has been kept track of, and this is the poster we've seen previously. You can see the timeline on the bottom where every time the designer made a change, every time the designer make a save, we create a snapshot of that save, and now you have the progression right there, and you can see the progression right there. And if you think about the companies that you've been working at, and you may just want to, hey, what has the designer been doing? What has the designer been doing with the mobile app that you are designing? And what's the thought process behind the designer? With this, we are providing a very simple way for you to actually see the progression or the visual history of a design. And lastly, just some visual representation of things. If you think about GitHub itself, if you want to search for any projects on GitHub, it's paragraphs of text, right? Like these are the trending things, and you can filter by languages. And obviously, it's not going to suit very well with design or a design space platform. So what we did is creating a space where you can very easily see all the projects, the beautiful cover photos of the projects. And not only you can easily tell who is working on what, but you can, each of these, instead of filtering by your C++, your CSS, your JavaScript, now you know, oh, is it done on an AI file? Is it done on a PSD file? Is it by Sketch? And that is what we have mirrored from GitHub to this space that we are looking at. So this is really just a very simple start, right? It's a long process. We still have a lot of work to do. But every time I talk about open design and we talk about what are some of the benefits, what is it about, and how we can do it, there's always these big questions that people ask. It's like, the first question is, how do we think about intellectual property? The first question everyone think about, for designers at least, is that I put something there and someone is going to steal it. It's like, I put so much effort in this icon. And the truth is that not all designs are meant to be open. I'm not asking every design to be open, right? If you think about it, it's probably not for these guys, the Pentagon, right? They're not going to put their secret rocket ship design out there. It's not meant to be open, and it's completely fine. It's the same with development work, right? Not all projects are meant to be open, which is why not everything is on GitHub. And the second thing is that it really depends on the creator. Even on GitHub, the creator decides a license. It's up to you to firstly open source it. The second thing is up to you to decide on the license. And for design, obviously I recommend Creative Commons, but it's really up to the creator to do that. So with that question set, the next question that I get is that designers hate to exhibit anything until it's perfect. It's like, I'm not done. This is like, it's really bad. Don't see it. Like, I'm gonna work on it for the next like three months. But it's really just beyond designers. To me, all creators have that mentality. Even programmers has that idea of like, this thing is not done. It's really buggy. Don't look at it. It's until like it's sort of semi-done, and then you look at it. But the whole idea about this is just to set the expectations right. Once you set the expectation right, it's completely fine. And what I mean by that is that even if you think about GitHub, if any of you open source any projects before, you create an empty repo first and you put your stuff right from the start. But no one will discover it per se unless they go to your profile page or they know the direct link to it. If it's not featured and you haven't been telling everyone about it, even the code is broken, but no one actually gets to it. But you actually start right from the start, which is the same as in this space, where you start tracking your progress, you start having it there, but it doesn't mean it's accessible, right? So the way we think about it, and the way I think about it, is that you create a blank canvas. You start to track your design progress, you start designing things, you start making changes. You only share or you promote, you write on your blog, you tweet about it, or we feature about you only when you're ready to, and it's really up to you. And I think the third step is the exhibit step, although you start at the point 1 and 2 in being open. So the point about hating to exhibit until it's ready is really about setting expectations, right? And if that's the case, then I think we can encourage a lot more designers to be open. So the last question is that, all these things are so great. So like, why didn't it exist before? Like, GitHub had existed for a while. Open source project has been already there for a while. And I think before this, I think we haven't had the chance to have an ideal platform for that, right? We talk about Git and GitHub. I think Git is too complicated for designers. I know a lot of designers, it's like, oh my god, GitHub, what's that? And it's really not ideal for graphic projects. It's not visual. It's really meant for text. And Dribble and Behance that is out there for quite a while is always meant for portfolio sites. It's a snapshot of your showcasing your work. So I think what we can do is really start now in various ways, right? So there's already buckets of open communities out there. So GitHub, obviously, we are having our open source code there. And we have SlideShare that many people are putting their presentations out there. And we have Splice, which is an open music collaboration. And Splice is also actually really quite new. It has been around for about 6 months to a year. But it's the idea of GitHub and Git for music collaboration. So for all of you music lovers out there, check it out, and it's really interesting. The idea about sharing your music, and anyone can come in and comment or collaborate on it. And I think about Pixel as the bucket for design, for Pixels related stuff. And with all these together, how can we push for all? The idea of more sharing about various things. So I think we got to start designing in the open, and it's a collective effort, and it's going to take some time. And when GitHub first started, you can host open source stuff, but it took a couple of years before it get as popular as it is today. So I want to tell you, I mean, most of you here are developers, I think. So this is a story that could happen between a programmer and a designer. So assuming that you are a developer and you want to make a Twitter notification app for the new Apple Watch, which is coming out. It's like, and I'm going to make that, I want to open source that. It's just fun. It's just my side project. I'm learning Swift, whatever, right? And then you are, I can't design for Nudge, right? And I want designer to work with me. So I ask, hey, any designers who's interested to make that together? And then you link up with a designer, and the designer say, awesome, I have ideas. And then your next question, okay, great. Now put your design in the GitHub repo. And the most reactions of designer is like, what? You're asking me to use Git, and what's going on? It's like, I don't understand that. It's like a disaster. It's like, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to do my own thing. It's like, it's a huge mess. So on one hand, you have developers who is working on open source stuff. There's, we want to use GitHub, and like designers, GitHub is confusing. And now we lack the aspect of iterations for design. We lack the idea of open for design because designers don't want to use Git and GitHub, and there's no other platform, right? So to me, what I think is that pushing for the idea that, hey, if you want to think about Git and GitHub for designers, you use Pixels, and what the idea behind about using that. So you have created, I mean, I've shown you from the visual aspect of how you explore it, how you can make it easy. But we have really spend time looking at the space of different design communities and looking at GitHub and how can we make it the most transparent way for us to encourage designers to be more open. So the first thing that you do is really like GitHub, right? You create a new repo. In this case, we call it projects because no designers understand what you mean by a repo. It's like, what? So you create a project, you name your project, and it's either open design project or a private project. And you choose your license, which is very, very similar. And next thing is that there's no commit message, there's no push, there's no pull, there's no trying to do a merge conflict. It's all about us syncing all your files out there. So every time you make a change in your Photoshop file, we push it out there. Every time you make a change in your AI file, we put it out there. Every time you make a change of a sketch file, it's also out there. So we make it really completely transparent for you. And designers understand that. Designers understand that I have a Photoshop file in my folder, I make a change, it's reflected out there. It's as simple as that. So we support most of the major files that the designers are used to, Photoshop, AI, Sketch, InDesign, PDF. So all these files that's out there, great. And we make it visual for both designers, the creators, and other developers looking at it. Now I can explore my files easily. This is kind of the same as GitHub in the sense you have a list of files, but a grid view makes more sense for designers and it's visual, right? And this is the part that allows us to kind of do a soft link together. Back to the question about how developers and designers can now work together is that, hey, this is actually the design project for the Apple Watch that we are making. All my assets are there, my latest changes are there. You can grab my PNG there, whatever. You can grab assets there, it's all there, right? And it links to GitHub. So right now, it's actually not, it's purely just a link, but actually we can set it, at least there's some sort of linkage to that. But we have, we are working on the idea that, hey, any changes can be pushed to GitHub in a specific folder so that your assets are synced. But the first step is really to encourage designers to be more open and to use think about a platform kind of like GitHub, get them to be used to the idea of GitHub, not so much the commit messages, not so much the push messages, not so much the GitHub workflow, but the idea and the philosophy behind Git and open source projects. And with that, we can link them together. So like what is currently out there today in our open design community is that we have different showcases. You can, if you want to look for wireframes, you want to look for Apple Watch resources, icon packs, UI packs, and all these projects that's out there today, they're all completely open. You can drill down to each file, and some of the icon packs have tons of like files, and the whole idea is that everything is there, and as long as a designer update that in their own Finder, you just double click the file, change the PSD, it's reflected immediately on the browser. So same with Apple Watch. And if you need icons, you need to design the next Apple Watch things, go there, download it, and you can get it. Same with icons packs. And we have a couple of nice icons packs out there, I think. So some of them has like 12,000 files, which is ridiculous. And at the same time, we are providing a very beautiful profile page. Unlike GitHub, which is very developer-centric, is like, how can we make it really, just really beautiful for designers to showcase their open source projects? And we also believe that to encourage and get people to get used to the idea of open source is to get them to have some sort of presence in the open source community. And what we realize is also the idea that the reason why developers contribute to open source projects or repos is because over time, people know them as contributing to a Rails project, and you seems cool, right? You seems, oh, you actually contributed. It's the same thing as what we think about all these things. It's like we namespace everything with your name, username, which is what we learned from the GitHub founders. And with that, every fork or every branches that you have from the design project it can link back from you. So if you created an icon set, and someone used your icon set to add another icon, it links back to you. So the way I think about it is really, okay, GitHub is great for text, it's great for your programming stuff, it's great for your code. And Pixelapse tries to facilitate the designer space, and designers being open on one end, working with developers being open on the other end, and linking both of them up together, working on the same projects. So I think in closing, this is the short thing, right? Like be open, design better, together, both you and designers among themselves. And if you know designers in sort of your company, it's just, hey, get them to get excited about designing open, sharing their progress, sharing, and being more open and being more used to this idea. I think it's beneficial to everyone. And so, yeah, that's all. And you can check out the website and ping me anytime. I think I have about 10 minutes for Q&A. Yeah.
I have two questions, but I can save one. I don't want to hog the questions. What about really collaborating on the same file with multiple people?
Yeah. So our platform actually allows you to do that. So it's kind of like Dropbox, where you share a folder, multiple designers can come together and edit the same file. The question is that there will be conflicts. And the question we get is that, how do we merge conflicts on design? Which is a valid question, but the other question is that, do we really want that? Because for something that is so visual, it's hard to know that when I make a change somewhere, is that change meant to be with the old version of the file? Because assuming that the old version of a design template is a flat design concept, and I change something that is also flat, and someone changed the icon to make it look 3D, now those two cannot be merged. Even if we want to merge it, it's not something we want. So in that case, we create a conflict, and we want the designers to step in to make that change. But it's a valid question, and I haven't really seen two designers working on the same file at the same time. I've seen designers staggering their work, but not at the same time. I'm not sure whether that.
It kind of happens at my work, but yeah, I think I agree that it's not necessarily better to merge conflicts and stuff. But so it would be a similar thing to Dropbox or Google Drive, where everyone just syncs to the same folder, and okay, cool.
Okay, so tracking this history of a design looks great, but it seems that it would work only as long as you keep the structures of the design files unchanged. Yeah? Like designers try to copy the same file under different names and make some different changes.
Yes.
Is there any way to like track this or to enforce some structure?
We actually think about that. That's a very good question, because we still get designers to do version 1, version 2, version 3, and how can we bring that together? We think we have some concepts around that. We haven't actually done anything about it, but it's a good question. It's like what it meant by branching off with a completely different design iteration, and how can we start comparing that together? We thought about that, but we haven't really made anything on it. But right now, it tracks changes on a single file. Yeah.
Just a quick question. Well, actually, two link questions.
Yep.
It seems that you're focused more on tracking changes in one direction only, which is, oops, there goes my phone. Forward in time.
Yes.
Can the designer go back to a previous version?
Yes.
And also related to that, because you made everything so transparent, is there any ability? I mean, I know you mentioned about commit messages and stuff.
Yep.
But is there any ability to make notes about what this change
Yes.
is? So those are two questions.
So good question. I didn't want to go too much into the product itself. I just really want to get the idea of open design. But let me go back to a screenshot of. Let me find it. Oh, here. So this is where I'm looking at it. Oh, you can't see it because it's a viewer page. But on each of these design iterations that we track, the first thing you can do is to mark specific revisions as milestones. You can click a little flag. It's not shown here because I'm not a creator of this file, but as a creator, you can do that. And every time you mark something as a milestone, you can actually describe why that piece of iteration is a milestone. Your first question was, can a designer revert? Yes. So for example, if the designer wants the first version again, he can. There's a button that we provide. It's called revert, and it just reverts back to the iterations. So every time you make a change locally, we upload the diff of that file. So we have your source file too, and it's kind of all backed up. Yeah.
Thank you. Wonderful job, by the way. I'm curious. Thanks. I actually used to use GitHub at a previous team to store my files, and we realized really quickly that the file sizes grow quite radically over time, very quickly, and you're using these larger documents. What kind of things do you do related to file sizing and just the capacity issues with how you're storing these?
So one of the problems with Git and GitHub is also what you have brought up, is that for teams that tries to use that, the GitHub technology itself is not meant for binary files. One problem is that GitHub doesn't really sync more than like 1 or 2 gigs of file, where design PSD files can be big. And the structure of Git itself tries to store beyond just deltas. The way we do it is that if your final artwork is 400 meg, it's just 400 meg, and that's it. All the different deltas are stored on the cloud. And every time you make a change of a file, we only upload the delta. So there's no sort of the question about the repo being bloated, because everything is deltas and everything is in the cloud. The deltas is in the cloud. Yeah.
At least you encourage the designer, where I am, the designer not to zip his work with version 1 zip, version 2 zip, etc.
Yeah.
That's gonna not work with diffs.
Okay, I'll ask the second one. What about other types of files? What are you considering, like specifically things like Keynote for designers who do pitches and presentations?
Yeah, we are working on Keynote, and we have been looking at it for quite a while, but we wanted to first support the Adobe Suite and Sketch. right now you can put anything there, we will still track it, but we can't generate the previews right now, but we still track it until we manage to generate previews for Keynote. Keynote is kind of hard to, Apple just keep doing different things about Keynote, which makes it really hard. Yeah.
So actually, design is really very closely related to user experience, which is very often a competitive advantage. So why would a designer actually show not only the final version of his work, but also all the way that he has made through and explain why I did this and this step and so on. So aren't we afraid actually to show our competitors how it should be done, and how do you cope with that? How do you encourage people to share their work?
I mean, back to the same point is that the way I think about it is, again, it's not meant for everyone. Right? If you are working on your, say you are working at Google and you're working on your search app, right? You may not want to open source that, and that's perfectly fine. And the way I think about it is that when you are willing to share, and if you are already on Dribble and you are sharing your zip file of your icons, right? Like, you should actually think about it right from the start and sharing the progression of it and everything. So it's not meant for everyone. And I also think that if you are encouraging people to share more frequently of their personal projects or things like that, then I think that we should share right from the start of the progressions and things like that. Yeah. Oh.
Sorry, this is really great. I have so many questions. What about the single project that has multiple file types? Like maybe you start sketching and you want to just upload pictures of your sketches, and then you go to OmniGraph or for wireframing, and then you go to Photoshop.
So I think the way we handle that is that it's really up to you to do this for the organizations. And like, for example, right here, I have a PNG folders that is all the exported files, and I have the sources, which contains all the AI files, and the vectors, which is another folder of the different stuff. So frequently you have a folder of inspirations too, and everything could be there, and it's just up to the designer to really, we don't want to have a strict workflow of any sense, but it's just up to you to manage that. So right now, the progression is only within a file, but that is something that we have thought about, and that is a lot more conceptual of how we can do that well. But right now, it's on a single file.
Yeah, I have a question. So until from when Pixelapse was created, and how many people are using it now, and what kind of projects you have on site? Like, what's the ratio between mobile apps, website, or the kind of projects?
Good question. I'm actually not very sure. Well, I guess we can only see it from the open part. I actually haven't looked at the stats, but icon stats is one of the big ones. That's for sure. Mobile apps, there's mostly iPhone templates or Android templates, but specifically like the ratio, I'm not super sure right now.
So you're saying there's a distinction between the open and closed part. Does it mean that you can use Pixelapse as a platform for collaboration, as a closed collaboration with say, a team of designers, and not open to a public?
Yes.
Oh, great.
So we think of us as really mirroring GitHub. If you in this slide, you'll see that when I create where is that? Here. So when I create a project, I can choose to be an open design project or a private project. And the way we encourage that is almost included in the pricing plan itself. Everything that is private, you got to pay us. Everything that is open is completely free, which is really like GitHub, where that's the way they encourage people to be more open. And everything that is open is unlimited, is completely free, and things like that.
Okay, thank you, Ming.